Right now, State Senate candidate Mike Callton is back for another visit. And, Mike, good morning to you.
Morning, Tim.
1 week.
Wow.
1 week and the voters go to the polls in the primary.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say as I can remember a primary that was as busy as this one is in Michigan.
Oh, there's a lot going on.
You know, your race against State Representative Dr. John Bizon. And then whoever wins that will square off in the general election in November for the 19th State Senate District. And, of course, State Representative Dave Matern being challenged by Matt Hall for that one. There's the governor. There's like 3 people on each side of that one.
Four on the Republican side, 3 on the Democrat side.
Yeah, and I think some libertarians in there, too, for good measure. And, my goodness, there's just a lot going on. The race with Fred Upton for Congress has contested races. But I'd say probably 2 of the hot races, though, are, of course, Matt Hall and Dave Matern. And then, of course, you and Dr. John Bizon. We are getting a lot of commercials firing back and forth. This morning I had to go out to the barn, get my 2-wheeled cart so that I could haul in all the cards I've gotten in the mail in the last week from you guys. Quite a few of these campaign cards in the mail. And it seems like energy is at the center of this right now. What is the difference between you and Dr. John Bizon on energy policy in Michigan?
I think this goes back to the energy vote. When I was still in 2016, Mike Knopf, he was the head of the Energy Committee, and he's the state senator that me and John are running to replace. He was chair of energy and put forward an energy bill that would dictate energy over the next several years, how that worked. And I supported that bill, and John voted against it. And this is the basis for a lot of the pro and con energy stuff that you're seeing right now.
Okay, so he says that he, being Dr. John Bizon, says that that bill will limit the choices of Michigan consumers, and that the bill you voted for helps big companies like DTE and Consumers Energy retain a so-called monopoly.
Well, that's his perspective of it and why he voted against it. Most representatives voted for it. The mainstream of the Republican Party supports it. And basically it provides energy security, over, the decade. And I agreed with Mike Knopf's bill, what he was doing in there. And I'm all for alternative energy providers, but I did agree with Mike Knopf's thoughts that if you're going to, say, buy and sell energy off the grid, you need to commit to having that supply. That times are tough, hot summer, everyone's using electricity, and suddenly the alternative providers can't buy or sell energy off the grid, then we're left in a hole. And perhaps what you've seen in other states like rolling brownouts and such. So it's really energy security and keeping energy jobs in Michigan.
I see. Let's shift to education for a moment and education funding. How do you feel about school choice and alternative schools and public schools and how all of these are funded?
Well, I remember now schools of choice and school choice are kind of 2 different issues.
Okay.
I was school board president at Maple Valley Schools when schools of choice began, where you could go within a school district without a release and acceptance from the 2 involved school districts, switch school districts within an intermediate school district. And that's an article I was reading what hurt Albion schools, and a big part of why we don't have an Albion school system the way we used to have it. Then there is school choice, which is the kind of choices you have. Public schools, do you homeschool, private schools, both parochial and non-parochial, and charter schools. And I'm all for school choice, but the way they funded school choice, I think, was very adversarial to the budgets of public schools. And where there are a lot of charter schools, the way they set it up, they draw money away from the public schools and cause some public schools some real budgetary problems. I've worked with school budgets, when I was on school board, and schools do well with steady and slowly rising income so that they can deal with inflation. But when you see drastic drops and rises up and down, that causes real problems and has caused, real headaches in the public school system.
Because people are choosing to move their kids to, say, a charter school and take that school funding over there with them.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So if 100 children and their families choose to go to a charter school, which I completely support, the way it was set up, it then takes the $8,000 per student with them and multiply that by 100 and take that away from the public school system, which still has to maintain the capacity to accept all the students in the district and really can cause budgetary problems within the school system.
So what's the answer then?
I think that, I do believe in the school choice. These charter schools are really good things. Private schools, maybe you want to homeschool, maybe you want to send them to a Christian school. These are all great choices. But I think there maybe needs to be two different silos of money so that when you have these choices, it doesn't drain the default public education. And most of the children in this area do go to public school.
So then are you calling for an increase in taxes or revenue then to fill that other silo?
I just think the silos need to be separated, still within the education budget, but separated so that it's not set up adversarially, where the better one does, the more it robs the other one. That's where the problem is the way that was set up.
Right, but if you set it up differently, how do you fund it?
Well, we do have education budget, and it's a very large part of our budget.
Mm-hmm.
And you can set up things within a budget where a certain amount of money goes to charter schools and a certain amount goes to public schools, but not set it up in that competitive system where the bigger and better this one does, the more it shrinks and detracts from this one. It just needs to be set up where it's not adversarial, where they each are taking from each other. That's where the problem is.
Right, but if there's only a finite amount of money earmarked for education, and how are you going to be able to set up an additional fund for charter schools and the alternative schools without either increasing the budget or taking it away from public schools?
Well, you take where we are now, and you look at how much money are the charter schools drawing, how much money are the public schools drawing, and you say this is the amount of money that's going to this one, and this is the amount of money that's going to the public schools, and this is where it will be. And they can work off those budgets because their budgets are predictable in that manner. Starting with today.
Okay. What about the idea, though, that we set this up with the idea that we would make public schools compete to be the best so that students wouldn't want to leave there, so the families wouldn't want to move their students to a charter school? Do you think that's not working, or do you think that's not a good idea? The incentive to force public schools to compete to be better or as good as the charter schools?
I like the idea of competition, and I remember it said for years that the public school systems don't have competition, and thus they don't, streamline, become innovative, and compete more.
Mm-hmm.
The net product, though, of what we've done is been that I think public schools have become weakened, just because of the budgetary woes created by the way it was set up. So it has not created stronger public schools. It's actually weakened them in practice.
Mm-hmm. Mike Callton, candidate for the 19th District State Senate, and we're talking Calhoun, Berry, and Ionia counties. You used to represent two of those counties, Berry and Ionia, when you served your full 3 terms in the state legislature, right?
Yes.
State House. And so now he's trying to get that back along with Calhoun County to represent in the state Senate. Imagine that you're spending most of your time down here in Calhoun County since folks already know you up there in those other two.
Correct. This is where I'm spending the majority of my time. This is the largest collection of voters in the district, and I am definitely giving them the attention they deserve. In fact, today I'll be knocking in Marshall, but we've been all over the county knocking, meeting people, meeting tens of thousands of people, and securing thousands of votes here.
Last time you were here, Mike, I asked you what most of them were bringing up. What was the top subject? You said by far and away roads. Is that still true?
Absolutely. Roads is our number one.
Mike Callton, candidate for state senate, in our studio to chat with us a little bit. What about roads then, Mike? We talked a little bit before about road funding, and Public Act 51 has been around now for more than half a century, and some people are saying we need to do some changes to how we fund roads because not every village and township and municipality is able, for one reason or another, to keep up with it all. Where do you think on that?
It's definitely not working, especially when you talk about townships. Townships are not in the Public Act 51 formula. They do not get money from it. Yet, in Calhoun County, they're being asked to pay for 70% of road improvements, even though they do not get money from that formula. So where does the money come from? Well, maybe they can't get a fire truck. They're having to have a pancake fundraiser to get a Jaws of Life, things like that. I've been at township meetings where they're talking about turning roads back to gravel from paved, but that's too expensive, so they're just going to close off the road. This is not working.
Well, right now, my understanding is that Public Act 51 takes all the monies collected for roads in Michigan, kind of puts it in three different pots, and then MDOT gets a big chunk of it, and counties get a big chunk of it. Are you saying that we need to reallocate how that's divvied up and take some away from one group? Like, for instance, MDOT, do they have more money than they need?
Well, that's part of where it needs adjusting. But before that money's divvied up into its pot for MDOT, for the state roads, and then you got villages and cities, and then you have counties. And once again, townships are not in the formula. But before you get to that point with the transportation fund, once that money goes in there, there's different groups that take money off the top before it even goes into that formula, like the mass transit fund, things like that. That needs to be looked at, especially this is a time where the money is going to be increasing as we get to 2021 and we finally get to that $1.2 billion of additional revenue.
Yeah, we're halfway through the bills passed when you were in the State House. 3 years ago, and we still have 3 to go before that's finished.
Yes, and it's disappointing. I really thought we would be further along at this point. The perception of the public and myself is that roads aren't significantly better.
Mike, before we run out of time, tell us what's different between you and State Representative Dr. John Bizon. What are the differences? Why should voters choose you instead of Dr. Bizon for State Senate?
Well, number one, I feel I have more relevant experience. I've had 6 years in the House. I chaired Financial Services and I chaired Health Policy Committee. John's, into his 4th year now. Also, I've got background on school board. I was a county commissioner. And so I think I have more relevant experience at state and local government. And I feel I am more conservative. And it's interesting, everyone in this race is saying, I'm the conservative. And it's an easy thing to say about yourself. I did bring something from the American Conservative Union where they actually rank different legislators for being conservative. In the 2 years that we were both in the House of Representatives and we voted on the same thing, they ranked me as more conservative in both those years. And I brought this for you, and you can look at it.
Okay, that's certainly interesting.
So I feel I'm the more conservative candidate.
What about endorsements? seen a lot of endorsements on both sides, but who are some of the groups endorsing you, Mike?
Well, certain groups are endorsing me. Certain endorse John. 4 of John's endorsements that he mentions, I also have.
Oh, really? So they endorse both of you?
Yes. Like the Coalition Responsible Gun Owners both gave us both an A rating. Right to Life of Michigan endorsed us both. Citizens for Tradition of Values endorsed us both. We both have the Small Business Association of Michigan stamp of approval. Now, he's got additional endorsements. I have additional endorsements. I'm the only candidate in this race with the NRA A rating. I have the endorsement of the Grand Rapids Area Chamber of Commerce and the Michigan Credit Union League, Michigan Nurses Association, and, I am a chiropractor. The Michigan Chiropractic Association has endorsed me.
There's a surprise, but
if I didn't get that one, I'd be in trouble.
Well, 1 week left. I know you've been knocking on a lot of doors. If there's one reason why we should vote for you instead of your opponent, what would that be? The experience? Is that what you're going to?
More relevant experience and more conservative.
All right. Mike Callton, we'll leave it right there. And best of luck in the final week of the campaign. The voters go to the polls in the primary election next Tuesday. I hope people will turn out to vote. A lot of times people don't vote in the primary because there's not a lot going on. There's a lot going on this time. So I hope people will take a look at it this week, make a decision, go to the polls next Tuesday. Mike Callton, thanks again for being with us today.
Thank you.